Welcome, traveller, to a quiet place beneath starlit skies. Tonight, let us drift slowly through the ancient lands of Alagasia, not in haste or battle, but in reflection. In this soft hour, we'll explore the hearts and histories of those who shaped the world. Brave Eragon, wise Saphira, the conflicted soul of Murtagh, steadfast Arya, and others whose paths touched fate. Their stories are woven like threads in a tapestry, rich with sorrow, strength, and quiet resilience. As we journey through their lives, may the calm of their wisdom settle gently over you. Let the rhythm of their stories guide your breathing, and may the echo of dragon wings carry you toward peaceful dreams. Close your eyes and rest. Chapter 1: Eragon. In a quiet corner of the world, nestled between the jagged peaks of the spine and the endless expanse of open plains, there once lived a boy named Eragon. He was not a prince, nor a warrior, nor anything destined for greatness. Not yet. He was a farm boy, raised in the sleepy village of Carvajal, where days moved slowly and the rhythm of life was measured in the turning of seasons, the hush of wind through the barley, and the crackle of fire on cold winter nights. Eragon lived with his uncle Garrow and his cousin Roran. Their lives were shaped by earth and harvest, by simple routines and the comfort of familiarity. It was a life of quiet hardship, but also of peace. A life in which a boy could wander the hills and woods, dreaming not of kings or dragons, but of the next hunt, or a flicker of adventure that might lie just beyond the horizon. And then, one day, the world whispered back. In the depths of the spine, amidst snow-covered trees and ancient stone, Eragon found something strange. Something that glimmered like a sapphire caught in moonlight. A stone, smooth and impossibly blue, humming with a life just beneath the surface. He did not yet know that it was not a stone at all, but a dragon's egg, the last of its kind, a secret hidden for years, waiting to be found. From that moment, Eragon's life ceased to be ordinary. The egg hatched in the stillness of night, under a sky littered with stars. A small, delicate creature emerged, her scales shimmering like glass in water, eyes bright with intelligence, movements cautious, and then bold. Saphira. They were bound together in that instant, not with rope or oath, but with something far deeper, a bond of minds, of spirits, a tether between hearts that no force could sever. For the first time in many lifetimes, a rider was born. And yet, Eragon was still just a boy, one with calloused hands and questions too large for his years. What did it mean to bear this responsibility, to be chosen by fate? He did not know, not yet. The peaceful life he had once known began to unravel. The Razak came, cloaked in shadow and silence, seeking the egg that had slipped through the fingers of a dark king. In their wake, they left only pain. Garrow, the man who had raised Eragon as a son, was taken by fire and death. The farm, the hills, the life once lived, it was gone. Eragon's grief burned, as did his desire for justice. With Saphira by his side, he left Carvajal behind. The fields and trails he had once called home vanished into memory, and a new path opened before him, one lined with danger, mystery, and magic. But he was not alone. Brom, the village storyteller, old and full of riddles, became his guide. Beneath the surface of the old man's tales lay truth, of dragons, of riders, and of a time long past. Brom taught him swordplay under starlight, the ancient language in quiet glades, and the value of thinking before acting. And though Brom's past was shrouded, there was kindness in his gaze, pain too, the kind of sorrow born only of loss. Eragon grew under Brom's care, and then, too soon, he lost him. Another wound upon the soul, another goodbye whispered too early. As the world grew larger, so did the weight Eragon carried. He battled shades and soldiers, met elves and dwarves, and saw the cruelty of Galbatorix's rule firsthand. With every step forward, he was reshaped, not only in body, but in spirit. He was no longer the wide-eyed boy from Carvajal. Yet within him, that boy remained, a flicker of gentleness, of wonder, a longing to do right in a world that often made that choice difficult. Saphira remained his constant. When words failed, she understood. When sorrow overwhelmed, her presence steadied him. Their bond was a sanctuary, a place where neither was alone. She was fire and wisdom, patience and passion. She challenged him, protected him, teased him, loved him. Not with the love of possession or pride, but the kind that grows in silence, in shared glances, in the quiet communion between two beings who are truly one. Together, they were whole. And yet, Eragon still wrestled with doubt. He questioned his lineage, feared his blood might be poison. Murtagh, his brother, stood as a reflection of what Eragon might become, if power outstripped compassion, if chains bound the soul. The revelation that they shared a father, Morzan, a traitor, rattled the very foundation of Eragon's identity. But Brom had been more than a teacher. He had been something else. In time, Eragon would learn the truth, that Brom had been his father in more than name, and that the love he had offered was real and freely given. A bittersweet truth. The path of a rider is a lonely one. Eragon walked it through battlefields and mountain passes, through cities built of stone and secrets, through forests ageless and glowing with enchantment. He studied with Oromis, the last rider of old, learned not only how to wield power, but how to resist it, to be strong, not through dominance, but through restraint. Magic, Oromis taught, was not a weapon, but a language, one that demanded listening as much as speaking. Eragon listened, to the trees of Duveldenvarden, to the dreams of dragons, to the silence of grief, and through listening, he grew. He changed in body, granted strength and longevity by the magic of the elves, but more importantly, he changed in heart. He began to see the world not through the lens of revenge or glory, but of responsibility, compassion, balance. Arya remained near him in those years, elusive, elegant, brave. Eragon's heart stirred for her, not with boyish infatuation, but with a deep, aching admiration. And though she did not return his love in kind, there was something powerful in their connection. A bond forged in fire and trial, quiet, steady, and filled with respect. Love, Eragon learned, was not always about possession. Sometimes it was about letting go, about walking beside someone even when they would not turn toward you. He carried that truth gently. The final battle loomed, heavy like a storm on the horizon. Galbatorix waited in Uruben, surrounded by the ghosts of the riders he had destroyed and the power of a name, an ancient word that bent magic itself to his will. Eragon stood before him not as a conqueror, but as a mirror. He did not raise his sword to strike. He used the oldest magic of all, understanding. He showed Galbatorix the pain he had caused, made him feel it, the weight of his own cruelty. It was a quiet revolution, a spell of empathy. And in that moment, The king unravelled, not with a roar, but with the silence of a man who could no longer bear the truth. The empire fell. But peace is not an ending. It is a beginning. Eragon knew that to rebuild the riders, to nurture the next age of dragons, he could not remain. The soil of Alagasia was rich with memory, but it was not meant to hold him forever. He said his goodbyes. To Arya, now Queen of the Elves, radiant and resolute. To Roran and Katrina, new parents cradling a child born into a world without tyranny. To Nasuada, wise and fierce, burdened now with the task of governance. To a land that had shaped him, scarred him, and loved him. And with Saphira, he sailed east, beyond maps, beyond legend. Out there, past the last known shores, he would begin again. Not as the boy who had found a dragon egg, not even as the rider who had slain a tyrant, but as a guardian of the future, a quiet protector of something precious, of hope. Chapter 2. Arya. In the quiet hush of moonlight, beneath the boughs of ancient forests, let us turn our thoughts to a figure both noble and mysterious. Arya Drottningu, elf, warrior, diplomat, daughter, and, at last, queen. Her journey winds like a river through the wilds of Alagasia, silent in its depth, powerful in its course. Tonight, we rest beside her path, and with each breath, we travel deeper into the soul of a character shaped by grace, pain, and purpose. Born in the timeless sanctuary of Elismera, Arya is the daughter of Queen Islanzadi, ruler of the elven people. Her early years were steeped in the tranquility of the forest and the philosophies of her kind, who lived not in haste but in harmony. The elves of Alagasia are not untouched by sorrow, but their lives move like slow tides, long and thoughtful. Arya was shaped by this world of silence and light, where magic breathes through leaves and the ancient language is spoken with care. And yet, from a young age, Arya chose a path not of ease, but of responsibility. She became an ambassador, both to the dwarves and to the humans, bearing the weight of trust between peoples. Perhaps her nobility was not only inherited but chosen, forged in the quiet dignity of service. She walked among strangers, far from the cradle of her youth, carrying a burden she did not speak of often, a dragon egg, precious and fragile, the last hope of a broken legacy. This egg she protected for many years, moving from place to place, evading capture, preserving its potential. It was not only a mission of duty, but one of silent devotion. The dragons were all but gone, and with them, the riders who once brought balance to the world. In her hands rested the seed of something greater. Though alone, Arya stood watch, steadfast as a mountain. But duty can be costly, and her capture by the servants of Galbatorix marked a dark passage in her life. It is a chapter only softly whispered in the stories. Her strength endured, but at great pain. And yet, even after such torment, she returned, not broken, but refined. Like moonlight on a blade, her calm became sharper, her presence quieter, and her eyes more watchful. In Eragon, she saw both promise and peril. He was young, untested, full of fire and questions, and yet their paths intertwined as fate quietly insisted. What grew between them was not romance in its blooming sense, but something more enduring, respect, mutual reliance, and a connection born not of longing, but of shared burdens. Eragon admired her, yes, but Arya never allowed herself to become an object of desire. Her distance was not coldness, it was clarity. She had lived longer than Eragon could comprehend. Her years had shaped her into someone who understood that affection without understanding is fragile, and so she stood beside him, not as a prize or a muse, but as an equal. When he faltered, she did not scold. When he asked more than she could give, she did not scorn. Arya met him with honesty and patience, always guiding him back to purpose. Her powers as an elf were deep, rooted in ancient magic and the rhythms of the world. She moved with precision, fought with grace, and when she spoke, it was with the weight of knowing. Her magic was not loud, it whispered, it healed, it guarded. She lived in balance, not for pride, but for peace. Her connection to the natural world was not sentimental, but sacred. There are quiet moments in Arya's journey that deserve more than a passing glance. Times when she stood alone in the forest, speaking to the trees not with words, but with presence. Times when the moonlight caught her face as she tended to the wounded, silent in her grief. Times when she looked toward the stars, not for guidance, but for remembrance. In her stillness, she carried echoes of lost friends, of forgotten dreams, of the burden of living when others could not. She did not weep often, but when she did, the tears were not weakness, they were truth. Arya understood sorrow as an undercurrent to life, not a flaw in it. She bore her grief like armor, not to keep the world out, but to honor those she had lost. Her calm was not detachment, but a kind of strength forged in fire cooled by time. As the Varden fought, as cities rose and fell, Arya remained a presence that did not waver. She led when others hesitated. She fought when others faltered. And when the moment came to choose a path for herself, she stepped forward not as a princess, but as something greater, a symbol of enduring will, a voice for those who had none, a guardian of the future. When the war ended and the world stood still in its quiet aftermath, Arya did not flee the silence. She walked into it, and there she accepted the crown, not out of ambition, not out of pride, but because the elves needed someone who understood not only how to rule, but how to listen. As queen, Arya became more than her past roles. She was not just the messenger or the warrior or the daughter of a line. She was the voice of renewal. Under her guidance, the elven people would not merely survive, they would grow. And as she stood beneath the leaves of Elesmera once more, she did not look to the past with longing, but with reverence. And what of Eragon? What of the bond they never spoke aloud? It remained, soft as a sigh. He left, as he was always meant to build a future for dragons, to find peace beyond the horizon. Arya did not follow. She remained, and in her remaining she honored the parting. Some connections do not end. They simply change. Perhaps in the quietest hours, under the watch of silver stars, she thought of him. Perhaps not with regret, but with a gentle understanding. She had walked through loss, through war, through the aching silence of responsibility, and still she stood. So let us drift now, through memories of Arya's grace. Let us rest in her silences, walk with her beneath the trees, feel the hush of her thoughts. Let us remember that strength is not always loud, that leadership can be quiet, that wisdom often whispers. Arya Drotningu, the one who bore the egg, who fought beside the last rider, who watched a new age dawn and did not flinch. She is not just a warrior or a queen. She is a guardian of hope, clothed in calm. A woman who chose not the easiest path, but the truest. As you close your eyes tonight, imagine the soft rustle of elven leaves, the shimmer of magic in still water, the quiet breath of a queen who watches over her people with patience and peace. And in that stillness, let your thoughts dissolve into dreams. Let Arya's presence guide you into rest. You are safe now in the folds of this quiet world, where dragons once flew and the forest never forgets. Chapter 3. Murtagh. Let us begin in stillness, with the hush of twilight pressing softly against the walls of your mind. Breathe slowly, as if the world has quieted just to hear the echo of one man's journey. Tonight, we turn our gaze to Murtagh, a name spoken with mystery, with sorrow, and with grace. He is a character drawn in shadow, but within him lies a quiet light, flickering but never extinguished. Murtagh, the son of Morzan, the first and last of the Forsworn. From birth, he bore a name steeped in fear, betrayal, and darkness. He was born not into a family, but into a legacy, cold and sharp as steel. Raised within the cruel heart of Galbatorix's court, he learned early that trust could be a weapon, and silence a shield. His childhood was not marked by the warmth of lullabies or the softness of a mother's touch. His mother, Selena, known as the Black Hand, kept him hidden from the world and from Morzan's cruelty. Yet, even in that secrecy, there was little peace. Murtagh was taught to fear and to fight, to survive in the corridors of power where affection was a liability and cruelty a currency. Imagine him, a boy with silver eyes like polished ice, walking alone through marbled halls, his footsteps echoing, his shadow his only company. Every whispered word behind closed doors reminded him of what he was, Morzan's son. He bore the sins of a father he could barely remember, a burden so heavy for shoulders so young. As he grew older, so did the weight of expectation and judgment. Though he rejected his father's legacy, the world was slow to believe him. He was neither child nor villain, but something in between, an uncertain shape that people struggled to understand. He sought solace not in people, but in books, in training, and in quiet moments stolen under open skies. When he fled the Empire, it was not an act of rebellion, but of necessity. He was hunted by the very master who once claimed to protect him. But freedom, when it came, was fragile and brief. It was in those early days of wandering that he met Eragon. Eragon, the farm boy turned rider. They met not as enemies, but as two young men burdened by legacies they did not choose. In each other, they found something rare, understanding. There was no need for pretense between them. Both were marked by fate, by loss, and by the ache of not belonging. Their bond was built in the quiet hours, by firelight and under stars. They sparred not just with blades, but with ideas. They challenged each other, and for a brief, shining moment, Murtagh believed that perhaps he too could belong to something good. But life, as it often does, turned. When Murtagh was captured and brought before Galbatorix, everything changed. The king, cunning and cruel, did not waste the opportunity. He saw Murtagh's strength and his bloodline, and twisted both to his will. Through ancient spells and forced oaths, Murtagh became bound. His will was not his own. He was given a dragon, Thorn, a red dragon, fierce and young, whose growth was unnaturally accelerated. Thorn was no ordinary hatchling. Like Murtagh, he was shaped by pain, moulded by force. And yet, in Thorn, Murtagh found a kindred spirit. They shared not just a bond of rider and dragon, but a deeper understanding. Two beings shaped by suffering, trying to retain some fragment of themselves. Together, they became Galbatorix's weapon. But Murtagh never surrendered fully. even when his hand struck against his will, even when his voice cast spells in the ancient language he could not disobey, his heart resisted. Quietly, desperately, he pushed back. He softened blows where he could. He warned when he was able. He showed mercy, even as he was forced to act without it. The world saw him as a traitor. But Murtagh was never simple. He was a soul at war with himself, trying to find rightness in a world where choices had been stolen from him. Imagine him now, standing on the windswept ramparts of Uruban, eyes lifted to the stars, not speaking, just watching. A prisoner with power, a boy in a man's armor, wondering if redemption could ever find him. His relationship with Eragon, once a bond of brotherhood, became fraught with tension, anger, and regret. When they met again on the battlefield, it was not as allies, but as adversaries. And yet, even in confrontation, there was something unspoken between them, a plea for understanding, a hope for forgiveness. Murtagh's path was not marked by grand speeches or dramatic reversals. His redemption was quieter. It was in the way he spared lives when he could, in the way he questioned the king's commands, in the way he searched for a fragment of the man he might have been. Through all this, Thorn remained by his side. Their connection was one of the few truths left to him. They comforted each other in silence, often communicating without words. In Thorn's presence, Murtagh could rest, if only briefly. They curled together in the quiet spaces of the citadel, two exiles in body and spirit. Love for Murtagh was not loud or easy. It was a yearning more than an experience. He loved quietly, perhaps his mother, in fading memories, perhaps Eragon, as a brother who could never truly be again, perhaps Thorn, most of all, and perhaps, in rare moments, he found love for himself, though that too came at great cost. Identity was never clear for him. He was Morzan's son, yes, but also his own man. He was a rider, but one forged in pain. He was a warrior, but not cruel. In the silence of night, he would often question, "Who am I when the spells are gone? Who could I be if I were free?" When Galbatorix fell, brought low by Eragon's final act of truth and empathy, Murtagh was freed. The oaths that bound him shattered like chains turned to dust. But freedom, for him, was not joy. It was a new burden, the weight of what he had done, even unwillingly, the gaze of a world that remembered him for the harm he had caused. He chose exile not as punishment, but as healing, to walk a path away from power, away from the noise of war and throne, to be with Thorn somewhere quiet, somewhere far from judgment, where they might learn who they were beneath the scars. And so he wandered, through misted valleys and over sun-warmed hills, seeking a place where the echoes of his past might soften, where the future might grow like wildflowers, uncertain but alive. Murtagh's story is not one of perfection, nor even clear redemption. It is a tale of quiet resistance, of choices made in the smallest cracks of freedom. It is about the enduring strength of a soul that refused to break, even when bent beyond reason. He teaches us that being misunderstood does not mean being unworthy, that forgiveness, most of all, must come from within, that even in the darkest halls, a single light can flicker. As you rest now, perhaps you can picture him, Murtagh, not as the warrior or the son of a tyrant, but as a man at peace beneath a silver sky. Thorn beside him, breathing slow and deep. The wind carries no commands, only silence, soft and whole. He watches the stars, not with longing, but with quiet acceptance. He has walked through fire. He has felt chains, and now the coolness of dew on grass. This is not an ending, but a beginning he chooses for himself. Sleep well, gentle listener. Let the story of Murtagh remind you that healing is a slow unfolding, and that even the most wounded hearts can find stillness. Chapter 4. Saphira. Hush now. Let your breath slow. Let your thoughts drift, gentle as a feather upon the wind. The stars wheel silently overhead, and all around is still. This is a time for quiet things, for stories told not in the rush of battle or the crackle of flame, but in the hush between heartbeats, in the hush of wings over moonlit mountains. Tonight, let us think of Saphira, not the warrior, not the flame, not even the legendary dragon bound to a rider, but Saphira, the soul of the sky, the ancient azure guardian who loved, who remembered, who dreamed. She came into the world not with a roar, but in silence, still as stone, a sapphire egg cradled in a secret place. For years untold, she waited, not in impatience, but in a hush deeper than time, listening to the world turn, to the whispers of the trees, to the murmurs of the mountains. Inside her shell, the memories of dragons past stirred like wind through pine needles. She was not lonely, not afraid. She was simply waiting for the right voice. And then, one day it came. A boy, so small in the shape of the world, but vast in heart, reached out with wonder and hope. His name was Eragon, and when his fingers brushed the smooth curve of her egg, when his spirit brushed hers through the veil of stillness, Saphira stirred. The bond sparked into being not with thunder, but with a breath, a lightness, like the first flake of snow falling into a deep forest. The shell cracked, the egg opened, and two lives intertwined. From that moment forward, she was never alone again. She saw the world anew through his eyes, and he through hers. In her first gaze, so blue and deep, there was age older than stone, wisdom deeper than rivers, and the calm of skies unbroken by storm. She was not only dragon, but memory, of all her kind that came before her. And yet, with Eragon, she was also new, a hatchling and a teacher, a friend and a guardian. Their bond was wordless before it was spoken, soul to soul, thread to thread. Where one turned, the other followed. Saphira was not only powerful, no, her true essence lived in stillness. Her strength was not in flame, though she bore it, nor in claw, though she wielded it. Her true strength was in her presence, the quiet, immovable calm she offered like an ancient tree shading a weary traveller. She listened more than she spoke. She observed before she acted, and when she did speak, it was like the ringing of a bell in a foggy morning, low, clear, and true. Dragons are majestic, yes, but Saphira carried her majesty not in pomp or pride, but in grace. Her wings, vast as sails, moved through the sky with a dancer's rhythm. Her scales shimmered with the hue of the deep sea at twilight. She was beauty carved from the old world, yet never boastful of it. In every movement was intention, in every glance a knowing. She loved Eragon with a devotion that did not need declaration. She guarded him fiercely, but more than that, she steadied him. When fear took him, she held him in silence. When doubt clouded his thoughts, she was a quiet mirror, reflecting the strength he forgot he possessed. She could be playful too in those early days, nudging him with her snout, rumbling with draconic amusement when he stumbled over her thoughts. She was endlessly patient with his youth, never scolding, never demanding. She knew that time shapes all things, and that she had time enough to shape a rider. For Saphira, time moved differently. Her thoughts stretched long and slow, like shadows at dusk. She remembered places that no longer existed, rivers dried to stone, and songs sung in the time of the old riders. But she did not grieve the past. Instead, she carried it, wrapped it around herself like a cloak, and through Eragon she wove that ancient thread into the present. To her, humans were both fleeting and marvelous, fragile as leaves, and yet capable of great light. She did not mock their short lives. Instead, she honored them with her protection, with her respect. In her eyes, Eragon's people were worthy of guidance, not contempt. And magic. Oh, magic sang to her blood like a lullaby. Not merely a tool, but a song she could hear in the stones and stars. She understood magic the way the wind understands flight. It was part of her, a melody too old for words. When she breathed it, it wasn't with power alone, but with reverence. War, though, was not what she cherished. Though she fought, it was never with joy. She did not hunger for battle. She bore it because she must, because Eragon must. But when the blood dried, she turned her eyes back to the quiet places, to groves thick with moss, to hills where deer moved soft as mist, to the sky where peace still lingered. In truth, Saphira was never only a warrior. She was a companion, a guide, a shield, a lullaby sung in scales and shadow. There were times, between journeys, between dangers, when she and Eragon would lie beneath the stars, her wings curled around him like a blanket of twilight. And in those moments, they spoke without words. Their minds brushed like petals in the breeze. Sometimes she would hum, not with sound, but through the bond they shared, a draconic echo of comfort. And Eragon, resting with his back against her warm, humming chest, would feel all the fear melt away. In the hush of dawn, she would wake before him, still as stone, watching over him with an affection so deep it did not need to be said. She marveled at his dreams, at the way he grew into himself, moment by moment, and she never rushed him. She simply was, a quiet force beside him. Saphira felt lost deeply, though she rarely let it show. When comrades fell, when choices were heavy, she carried the weight not only for herself but for Eragon too. She cradled his sorrow in her heart, holding it gently, like a flame in her claws. She did not speak platitudes. She did not tell him not to grieve. She simply remained near, and that in time was enough. Through it all, she kept hope. Hope that the world could be better, that dragonkind might rise again, not as tyrants, but as caretakers. The riders would walk once more with dragons, not in fear or dominance, but in harmony. She was the first of the new age, and she knew, deep in her bones, that her role was not only to survive, but to guide, to teach, to mother a future yet to be born. She imagined hatchlings again, tiny minds, curious and bright. She imagined the sky filled not with smoke and fire, but with flight, young dragons wheeling beside their riders, laughing with the joy of the wind. And she dreamed of forests that grew undisturbed, of mountains that echoed only with the cry of eagles. There were nights when she and Eragon soared in silence, high above the world. The moonlight kissed her wings as she glided, her shadow sweeping over sleeping fields. They did not speak, they simply flew. And in those moments, they were not legend, not savior and dragon, but two souls, bound by love and trust, drifting through the peace of the upper air. As time moved forward, and their journey changed from survival to healing, Saphira found herself becoming something even deeper, a beacon, a memory bearer, the bridge between past and future. She knew that she and Eragon would one day part from the world they had saved, not in death, but in destiny. And still, she did not fear the future. She knew that endings were simply the hush before a new beginning. And so, when the time came, when their task was complete, and the world exhaled in relief, Saphira lifted her wings once more. She did not stay where comfort lingered. No, she soared toward a new dawn, carrying with her the first new eggs, and the promise of dragonkind reborn. She was more than guardian now. She was mother to the future, mentor to the young, keeper of the flame. Her story was not one of destruction, but of restoration, not of fire, but of light. In her flight into the unknown, there was no fear, only purpose, only grace. The wind welcomed her as an old friend, and the sky bowed to her passage. And if you close your eyes, if you listen closely, you might still feel her presence. In the hush before sleep, in the rustle of trees at midnight, in the soft exhale of the stars, you might hear the echo of her thoughts, ancient and kind. "We are never truly alone," she once said, "not while the memory of love endures." So rest now. Let your worries drift away like smoke. Let your breath match the rhythm of wings in the night. Imagine Saphira, blue and beautiful, gliding beneath the silver moon. The world is whole again. Peace has taken root, and above it all, she soars, silent, strong, eternal. The heart of the sky, the soul of the wind, the dream of dragons made real once more. Chapter 5. Glaedr. In the hush of twilight, when the world softens and settles, when the sky blushes with the last light of day, and the stars begin to blink one by one into waking, there is a stillness deep and ancient, as though the earth itself is listening. If you are very quiet, you might feel it. A gentle pulse of presence, old and golden, resting beneath thought and time. This is where Glaedr lives, not only in memory, but in moments like this, in stillness, in silence, in the heart of things. He was not always only thought. Once, long ago, Glaedr broke free of his egg and into the world, golden and gleaming. His scales shimmered with a light like dawn on a calm sea, not sharp, not blinding, but radiant in a way that made one pause. He emerged not with a roar, but with a steady breath, deep and knowing, as though even newly born he understood the weight of the life ahead. There was wisdom in his eyes, even then, like starlight resting on deep water. And then Aramis came, not with fanfare, not with demand, but with the quiet reverence of one who knew what it meant to share a soul. Their bond was forged not in fire, but in stillness, in a moment of deep connection, of recognition that neither could fully name but both felt in the marrow of their being. From that moment forward, they were not two, but one, not the same, but inseparable, like two notes in a song that only made sense together. Together they grew, not just in strength, but in understanding. Glaedr listened to Aramis's thoughts as one might listen to the wind in trees, slow and thoughtful, always carrying more than what was spoken aloud. Aramis, in turn, listened to Glaedr's silences, his unspoken impressions, his weight of thought. They became students not only of magic and law, but of each other. And in that shared learning, a deeper bond formed, one of trust without condition, presence without pressure. Glaedr believed in the ancient ways, not as rules, but as rhythms, the natural breathing of the world. He saw the balance between dragon and rider as sacred, a harmony that must be nurtured, not controlled. For though dragons were creatures of fire and flight, he knew they were also keepers of memory, of time, of the long song that binds the land and sky. In Oromis, he found not a master, but a mirror, someone who understood that their purpose was not conquest, but care. To see Glaedr in those days was to witness majesty at rest. His golden form held not the violent shimmer of flame, but the warmth of sunlight seen through a canopy of leaves. His wings could shadow entire clearings, yet when he moved, it was with quiet grace. He was not thunder, he was resonance, not rage, but power held in patience. Beneath his scales was a mind that stretched far and deep. Glaedr thought in centuries, not seconds. He remembered whole lifetimes the way others remember a day. And in his stillness there was strength, the kind that needs no declaration. His presence spoke not of dominance, but of enduring calm. His words, when they came, were chosen as carefully as stones laid in a sacred path. In time, sorrow came. It always does. No life escapes it. When Oromis fell, when the bond that had defined Glaedr for so long was severed by death, he did not scream. He did not rage across the sky in flames. He became quiet, quieter than he had ever been. He entered his Eldunari, that sacred vessel of a dragon's essence. It pulsed with his spirit, his knowledge, his memory, a golden heart beating in stillness. There within the crystal, Glaedr lived on, no longer a creature of wing and bone, but of thought and light. He was not gone, only changed. He mourned, of course, deeply, but even his grief was calm. Heavy, yes, like a mountain rests against the earth, but never bitter, never cruel. In his stillness, he carried loss the way the sea carries moonlight, not clinging, but cradling. He would never forget Oromis, but neither would he let sorrow dim the golden flame within him. As time passed, Glaedr became not just a presence, but a guide. To Eragon, he was not merely a voice in thought, he was an anchor, a lighthouse in fog. His teachings were rarely direct. He did not shout answers. He offered space. He let questions rest before returning to them. His wisdom unfolded like petals in the sun, slowly, gently, without rush. He did not teach just spells or names or tactics. He taught the art of reflection, the value of silence, the dignity of waiting. Eragon learned from Glaedr how to sit with uncertainty, how to hold fear without letting it rule, how to speak less and listen more. Even in memory, Glaedr was a guardian, not of lands or treasures, but of peace, of clarity. He held no bitterness toward the world. He knew its wounds, and still he loved it. He saw the folly of men, elves, dragons, and yet he did not turn away. He remained, steady, enduring. He revered life in all its quiet forms, the curl of ferns in morning mist, the shimmer of starlight on water, the hush of libraries, the slow shift of seasons. He found beauty not only in the grand, but in the gentle, and in his still presence others found rest. Even as the world changed, even as new riders rose and old ones faded, Glaedr remained. In his Eldunari, he became something eternal, not a god, not a ghost, but a keeper of memory. He listened still, watched still, thought still. He offered his final wisdom, not with fanfare, but with grace. He reminded Eragon not of power, but of purpose, not of victory, but of vision. When the time came to choose, Glaedr did not press. He illuminated. His presence lingers now, not in form, but in feeling. In places where minds quiet, where hearts open, in every grove where wind speaks softly, in every dream where old gold glows. He is the hush before understanding, the breath before wisdom, and perhaps now, as your breath slows, you can feel him too, not as fire but as warmth, not as sound but as resonance, not as memory but as presence. He is there in the silence between stars, in the golden hush beneath ancient trees. He is waiting in the minds of those who seek, not watching to judge, watching to guide, to gently, patiently remind us what it means to think deeply, to feel fully, to live in stillness. So rest now, beneath the stars he still watches. Let your thoughts slow. Let the golden hum of his memory cradle you. For in the quiet places of the world, Glaedr is near, ever still, ever wise, ever golden. Chapter 6. Brom. In the gentle hush of nightfall, when the stars begin to stitch silver into the dark fabric of the sky, and the world tucks itself in beneath a quilt of quiet, we turn to the story of a man whose strength lay not in his sword, nor in the fire of his past, but in the silence between his words. Brom, he was never the loudest voice in the room, never the boldest presence, but when he spoke, people listened, and when he moved, it was with purpose woven through patience. There was an old kind of wisdom in him, like a tree that had weathered countless storms, yet still reached calmly for the light. Long before he was a storyteller with a crooked staff and a keen eye, Brom had been something else, a dragon rider, chosen by Saphira the Blue, bonded not by chance, but by a connection so deep, so profound, that to speak of it aloud would never quite capture the truth. Together, they had soared through skies now lost to memory. Together, they had shared dreams and fears, triumph and laughter, silence and sorrow, until, in a moment that would echo through every year after, she was taken from him. And so Brom fell from the skies, not in body, but in spirit. The fire dimmed, the songs grew still. He wandered then, not aimlessly, but with a quiet ache, a hidden wound. He carried it the way he carried everything else, close, quiet, with dignity. He became a man of stories, of riddles, of long silences by the hearth. But beneath the surface of that weathered face and sharp tongue, there was still the rider, the heart that had once beaten in tandem with a dragon's. In the village of Carverhall, he became something simpler, a teller of tales, a keeper of forgotten truths. He watched from afar, eyes always searching, for danger, for change, for the moment when the tides would shift, and they did. When a boy named Eragon found an egg that would hatch into a dragon, Brom knew. He knew in the same deep certain way he had once known Saphira, and though he did not show it, something stirred within him, a flicker of the old fire, a whisper of the past calling him home. He did not reveal himself easily. That was never his way. Instead, he stood by Eragon's side like an old shadow, offering wisdom in riddles, guidance in parables, truths tucked inside myths. He taught him not only how to swing a blade or cast a spell, but how to think, how to see the world beyond the edges of his own understanding. Each night by the fire, Brom's voice would weave through the trees, soft and steady, not booming like a bard, but gentle like the rustling of pages. His stories carried weight, not just the weight of knowledge, but of emotion, of memory, of loss. Through tales of riders and dragons, of battles and betrayals, he gave Eragon more than history. He gave him grounding. There was love in his teachings, though it rarely wore the name. It showed in his vigilance, in his stern corrections, in the way he watched Eragon when the boy wasn't looking. a kind of love that asked for nothing in return, that protected without fanfare, that guided from behind, allowing the other to lead. He did not speak often of magic, but when he did, his voice took on a different tone, one touched by memory, by reverence. For Brom, magic was not a tool of power. It was a thread that wove through all things, a quiet language between beings, a remembrance of what was once whole. And always, beneath it all, was Saphira. Not Eragon's Saphira, though he came to love her too, but the first, his, the one he had lost. Her name never left his lips, yet her shadow lingered in every pause, every glance at the sky. The bond he had once known remained as a scar etched across his soul, healed, but never forgotten. And still he carried on. Brom bore his pain not as a burden, but as part of him. He never asked for pity. He did not seek solace. He walked forward, each step steady, his grief folded neatly into his resolve. In this, he taught Eragon one of his greatest lessons, that to lose does not mean to break. That sorrow, held gently, can become strength. There were moments of softness, though they were rare and fleeting. A faint smile at a clever remark. A hand briefly resting on Eragon's shoulder. Eyes that shone, just for a second, not with fire, but with affection. He never said the words aloud, never claimed the title. But in the end, Brom was a father to Eragon, not by blood, by choice. And then, as all stories do, his time drew to a close, quietly, without spectacle. And yet, his presence did not vanish. It remained, in the sword he left behind, in the memories stitched into the fabric of Eragon's heart, in the wisdom that echoed in every decision the young rider made. Brom's legacy was not carved in stone or sung in great halls. It was found in quieter places, in moments of pause before action, in questions asked instead of answers presumed, in the strength to stand, not in anger, but in understanding. He was not a hero of flame and glory. He was the fire bank, the steady ember. He was the hand on the reins when fear gripped the heart, the voice in the dark reminding you to breathe. He was the one who walked before, clearing the path for those to come. And even now, in the long quiet of night, when the wind moves softly through the trees and the stars listen in their ancient silence, you can feel him, in stories told with reverence, in footsteps that follow wisdom, in choices made with care. He is not gone. He is the hush before a tale begins, the warmth beside a fire, the whisper in a young rider's ear. Rest now, with his story gently wrapped around you. Let your breath slow. Let the quiet find you, for Brom is near, not in flesh, but in spirit, not in noise, but in knowing, ever watchful, ever wise, ever kind. So now, let your mind drift. Drift back to the forests of Duveldenvarden, where light sifts softly through leaves, to the peaks of the spine, where wind dances over snow-laced ridges, to the sky above, where Saphira glides in wide, lazy circles, her scales catching the last gold of the sun. And there, upon her back, Eragon sits, eyes closed, heart calm. The weight of destiny no longer a chain, but a compass. The sound of wings is soft, soothing, and the story, for now, rests. Just as you will. Sleep well, dear listener. May your dreams be filled with dragons, stars, and sky. Good night.